Okay, so we are going to start the session number 6 of this AfPIF 2022 in Kigali. And this is going to be the regulatory presentations, then panel. We are not going to talk about the panel now. So we are going to have 2 presentations first. After that, we won't have the questions and answers. Then we go into the panel. As part of the panel, if you have any questions, they will be answered then. So our first presentation now is going to be from, well, a very well-known person in the ICT industry in Kenya. We know her through ICANN. She has represented Kenya, ICT industry in so many ways. And also she's involved in policy, and she's the CEO of TESPOK. Her name is Fiona Asonga. So Fiona, you could.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to just start off by thanking you for being able to attend this AfPIF. It's been a while since we had a face-to-face. I think COVID made us almost lose and forget how we looked like. So it's quite, I thank ISOC and AfPIF team for enabling us to be able to have this gathering. So my presentation is on interconnection policy and regulations. And I'm actually looking at, going to share a case study of the internet exchange point in Kenya and how we are serving the community. We are forced, as part of the services we give to the community at the exchange, to address regulatory and policy issues. Okay. Okay, who's handling the slides next? So the objectives of this session are to actually share experiences, to be able to get ideas from other regions on how you're addressing some of the issues we are addressing, and to be able to encourage collaborations amongst, especially ourselves as exchange point operators or the communities around the internet exchange points. Next. Sorry, I'll keep saying next in between because I have no controller. So quickly, a background of KXP, which is a Kenya Internet Exchange Point, is a service that is run and owned by the internet community within Kenya that are appearing at the Internet Exchange Point and are also members of TESPOK. It is fully owned by TESPOK in line with licensing requirements. It is fully locally owned. And then it was settled on the 14th of January. And this year we're celebrating our 20th anniversary. And so we are having the 20th anniversary celebrations for the whole year. So you'll see us more visible this year than we have been in other years. And key at this celebration has been the role TESPOK has played in adding value to the Internet Exchange Point community through the policy and advocacy efforts. Thank you. So what is the current policy environment like? There are challenges in our environment which we are operating as an exchange point, which we found that unless we address these challenges, it's going to be very difficult for us to be able to even get peers onto the exchange and to grow the ecosystem and to be able to give customers the full benefits of an exchange. And some of these have included, but are not limited. I'm just giving a few highlights of issues around aligning to new regulations. Right in the middle of COVID, we all were seemingly grappling with data protection policies at the same time within our respective regions. And Kenya wasn't left out. So that need to align to data protection regulations at the global level, at the national level, has been one of the challenges that we are facing. The second challenge is the issue of intermediary liability. When an ISP is providing connectivity, an exchange point is providing the interconnection and the peering, these are entities that are pipes. They don't manage the content. So to what level can they be held liable for content going over the pipes and transiting through? And the third is issues of infrastructure disruptions that I think have been very prominent in Kenya and in a very peculiar way. And we'll go into how that is happening. So the first one on aligning new regulations, like I've mentioned, the data protection laws have made it a bit of a challenge for ISPs that handle content and manage content distribution to be able to just operate like they used to. So they need to align, and in Kenya, they're having to be registered. So you need to get registration as both a content processor and a content distributor. And that means that you have to register twice. So there's no option that you register once and you get one license to go through. And then exchange points also are being licensed as data processors and data controllers, still under the data protection law. So you find with that, then we are becoming, everyone is becoming very careful about, so what kind of content can I really access and open within my pipes as an ISP and within my systems as an exchange point operator, because the penalties are very high. Then we've had some issues like the gazettement of the critical infrastructure for ICT, and those have been positive for us, though it has not been clear what the purpose of this has been and what the benefits and expectations are. So yes, we get gazetted, but we don't understand why we are being gazetted as critical and what the benefits are. So then we have to come in and negotiate on what we think the benefits of this protection from government should be, because government was gazetting us to protect us, the exchange points and the service providers. So then what do we stand to get out of such protection? That is still a work in progress. Then issues of intermediary liability, we've had situations where there is expectations from the public and policymakers for ISPs and internet exchange points to be policing the internet traffic. And this has come in Kenya, it's through the Copyrights Act, where we are seeing certain content owners being able to benefit from the way the law is written badly. I say badly because ideally the law should be able to protect the pipe provider, and the liability should be on the person who uses your infrastructure to access content and breaches the copyright of whoever owns the copyrights. So we've got one copyright provider in the country who has taken the entire ISP community to court and is demanding compensation and policing of the internet for content related to what they handle. Yet there are issues around that whole arrangement because the content comes in from Europe. The actual content owner who handed over their rights is a European entity that also has a legitimate YouTube channel through which they publicly air their content. So then we are left in a situation where we are spending quite a bit of fees in court. We are trying to negotiate, but we don't seem to be coming to a middle ground that is a balance for the contracted copyright holder and the ISPs. And I would just probably want to know how this has been dealt with in other jurisdiction, because ordinarily, and the way we have worked things at ICANN, ordinarily the ISP should benefit from intermediary liability when it comes to copyright issues. And so in an environment where that has not been recognized, what are the options and what is happening with regard to management of copyright? Because in Kenya, we are stuck until we can probably, after these elections, we'll have a new parliament who will go through a process of capacity building with the parliamentarians and get them to understand that there's an anomaly in our copyright law. And then third is the infrastructure disruptions. The level of infrastructure disruption in Kenya has been in very high levels. You find an organization will experience up to 15 cuts a day on one cable. That's one operator. So we did put the infrastructure owners into a WhatsApp group, and we began to keep track, and we realized the cuts on one operator alone are so high. When you put all the cuts of the 15 infrastructure owners in Kenya together, the amount of time and the economic losses are colossal because the cuts are just too many. So we are trying to figure out ways of working with different entities to try and address the issue of disruptions of the infrastructure. And this has been largely because as a developing country, we are building new road networks. So the road contractors come in and they recognize every other infrastructure except ICT, because ICT has not legally been recognized as hadn't been recognized as a critical service, and there is no law anywhere that protects ICT infrastructure. So you find the road guys will come, they'll dig, they'll cut your fiber, they'll lay their work on their roadworks. The sewage company comes, cuts your fiber to lay the sewer line. The water company comes, cuts your fiber to lay the water pipes. The power company comes in, cuts your fiber to lay the power lines. And so it's a story where the infrastructure owners are spending so much on just the cost of maintenance of ICT infrastructure in Kenya is more than the cost of initial capex to set up the infrastructure, which doesn't make sense, because then at the end of the day, it becomes very difficult for there to be more entities that can invest in that space, except a few daring ones who have found ways of trying to figure out how to continue running such businesses, because it's no longer economically viable. Then we've got a lot of challenges with in terms of documentation of where our infrastructure is. We had a change of regime during the new constitution. As a result, the old regime worked with paperwork, and many of the county councils had paperwork. Then we changed the regime from having county councils to county governments. And the county governments came in and they have no documentation. They can't go through the paperwork. It's so much. They are confused on where everything is. So it's like there's no data or documentation on where our infrastructure is, except for the service providers. And even when the service providers give that information, the entities don't believe it is accurate and they have nowhere else to check. So we have an issue around there that we're trying to solve. Then there is a lot of vandalism, because there's Kenyans who have found the shielding of the fiber optic cable as a very useful water pipe, or bull bars for what we call the matatus. In Kenya, we've got this public transport that is normally very multicolored and redesigned from what it's supposed to be. So one of the things and features they add to it is bull bars at the front, so that it can knock any other car on the road and create space for itself. So they use optical fiber for that function. And so there's been a lot of vandalism around that. We have a number of solutions, but they're all work in progress. And one of them has been capacity building by the community, which is the exchange point and its peering members, to enable various arms of government make decisions from an informed position. So we get them together, we have sessions with them, we get our members to present about how infrastructure works, how the system works, how the environment works, so that they can understand and work from informed positions. We also have been able to sign MOUs with some of the security agencies, so that at least on the side of infrastructure vandalism, we are working very closely with the Ministry of Interior, National Police Services, with whom we have an MOU to help us in terms of arresting and having the right charge sheets and following through with prosecution of vandalism issues. Then we are advocating for legislation amendments to protect service providers in partnership with the Kenya Law Review, because we need entities to still understand the whole concept of of intermediate liability. Then we are also trying to facilitate local infrastructure development standards, and we are part of the technical task force of the Kenya Bureau of Standards that is working on infrastructure deployment and how other entities need to engage with us. We have been able to put in our expectations of minimum standards within the National Construction Authority guidelines. And TESPOK is the body from the ICT side that is approving all the construction proposals that go through the National Construction Authority, so that we ensure that service providers within each area with these constructions are consulted and we know what is going on. But it's been worked on a collaborative effort. So we are collaborating with various arms of governments and with the different regulators through our regulator and directly as TESPOK. And then we are also facilitating collaboration between us as a community government and donor agencies. And we have seen the European Union come in and help us with 2 counties, Nairobi County and Mombasa County, where they're coming in to help us with the mapping and the deployment of a shared duct system for the entire counties that will enable us have proper documentation and possibly using technology is our expectation to be able to track and know where infrastructure is so that we can offer some infrastructure protection. And that basically is what I had to share, and I'm open to views and ideas of what else we can do to protect our infrastructure, what else we can do in terms of copyrights and intermediary liability, and also see what ideas and issues are happening everywhere. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Fiona. So moving on, we are going to another presentation, but this one is going to be done remotely. So the next presentation is from someone who is involved with the National Communications Authority in Ghana. She's a regulator, she's a network manager and trainer. So please welcome to the remote room, Ivy Tuffuor Hoetu.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon.
So we would want to see the presentation from her. Yeah.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can hear you, Ivy. Welcome.
Thank you.
We just want your presentation to be put up.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. If you could put it in presentation mode and you can start.
Yes, it's in a presentation mode now. Can you see that?
I think you are sharing the other screen.
Then,
Oh, perfect. We can see it now. Please go ahead.
okay. So I don't need to introduce myself because I've already been introduced. I am not new to AfPIF. This will be my 5th time joining, and I'm glad to be back. So I would like to share, or let us discuss on how we can ensure effective management of national exchanges as well as regional exchanges. That is if they exist. So my presentation will follow this outline, and I will introduce. Okay. So IXPs have developed over time. For Ghana, this will be the 17th year, and you know it's imperative, if not for anything, from the first presenter, you realize that it is key to involve regulators or policymakers to understand the issues and technicalities to aid in policy decisions. There's not necessarily any formal body that regulates ISPs, well, for Ghana, and then it is run by general consensus by the involving parties. And there are various models. Some are not for profit, like the case for Ghana. Some are for profit. Some are by research institutions and by government. And some governments have facilitated the establishment of ISPs, thanks to Internet Society, who has championed ISPs establishment, especially in the Africa continent. And some governments have facilitated it, and they can do more through the investor access funds, VAT tax reduction, etc. ISPs in my jurisdiction are classified as a public infrastructure, and as such requires a regulatory oversight. So regulatory framework are also dependent on each country's government, and they have helped in facilitating their establishment. Government's regulatory oversight is key to ensure citizens' data is protected, and as well as cybersecurity and other issues. In terms of fees, I know when most of us hear of fees, we are like, oh, we are going to be taxed like mobile network operators and all that. But in terms of ISP's fee, we can discuss about some administrative fee or even a waiver for those that are non-for-profit. So why regulatory oversight over IXPs? From the challenges shared from the Kenya presenter, you will bear with me at this point that there's some sort of collaboration that is needed to ensure the ISPs and the overall infrastructure in countries are protected and are effectively managed. So in terms of regulations, I'm not even talking of tough regulations like issues with mobile license operators. Soft regulations. Soft regulations will enable regulators to understand the technicalities. They will also appreciate these challenges and the overall benefits that ISPs do for a country, and even that will do for the continent. An effective, workable, and a sustainable memorandum of understanding between regulators and managers of the exchanges are also important. Governments providing support and funding to support ISP's creation, where there's one and the country is large, like in my case, if the government is involved and there's that collaboration, not only one, but more and more exchanges will be built. And then if the regulator is involved, it will ensure that all licensed or authorized entities that do some form of data exchange will connect to the exchange, data centers, content providers. And then this will ensure the exchange of traffic in the local country. The government oversight also will ensure or enforce protection of citizens' data, national security data, and the compliance with data protection laws. It will also ensure security and monitoring measures are put in place to guarantee the security of internet traffic as required by cybersecurity laws. And this will, when content providers and developers realize there's confidence in the system, they will bring their servers down to the continent, and it will reduce the amount of time when you have to access certain servers like visa. It has to travel and come back to your country. So should regulators be involved in ISP management? I would say a big yes. Regulations, not to impose certain fees or taxes or restrictions, but collaborative regulation, because the facility is a public infrastructure. Since public data is exchanged there, citizens and government data are involved. Cybersecurity and data protection issues are at play. It will ensure that internet traffic are kept and exchanged within, even though ISPs have developed, which has ensured a certain percentage of traffic are exchanged locally. Most of them still travel outside the shores of Africa. Then resolution, if regulators are involved, they will assist in resolving and mediating in issues between peering partners. Where peering entities have issues, whom do they turn to? So in terms of interconnection policy, this is a suggestion I want to bring on board. The regulators' involvement will ensure openness, fairness, and a level playing field for all connecting and peering parties. Through the African Union, ECOWAS, the other sub-regions, Eastern, Southern, and the Northern, regulators can facilitate discussions at such levels to push for inter-country exchanges that will ensure mutual benefit to all. This will also aid and encourage international content delivery networks to bring their servers closer to the continent. As I encourage further discussions in this area, I want to recommend that this year's AfPIF, through these discussions, will come up with a policy framework that will serve as a guide to developing memorandum of understanding between regulators and IXPs, and to ensure that they are effectively managed and they are sustainable in the countries where they exist, and encourage the creation of more. I thank you for your attention, and your questions and contributions are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ivy. While we still have Ivy online, if there is any question before we hand over to Ben for the panel, because we might not have here all the time through the panel.
Hello, Ivy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, wonderful, thanks. So my name is Ben Roberts. I'm the one moderating this panel in the room. I was wondering, obviously it's different in different countries, but we see some countries in Africa where the regulator is actually the operator of the exchange. So I've got no problem with the regulators putting in place regulation for the exchanges, and as you say, it's public infrastructure, so it's good and normal. But there becomes a difficulty when a regulator is regulating exchanges and also operating exchanges. There's a potential conflict of interest, because that might be a difficult situation. So I was wondering what you thought about that.
Okay, to the best of my knowledge, in my presentation and the little research I have done, some governments have their own exchanges that they manage. And that angle, if it's managed by a regulator, I believe they have national policies. I don't know, or I've not come across challenges with countries that the regulator is managing the exchange and also regulating the industry. So that is why I am advocating for a memorandum of understanding. A memorandum of understanding in the case of sharing of the traffic, so that the regulator or government is aware of what is going on or exchange in this country. Of course, not for political purposes, but for development purposes. When there's a security breach, the government is known, is involved. On that angle, it is, I don't think it's bad, but where there's not understanding, the industry is not in support and all that. That one, I think further discussions are required for such a country. But for Ghana here, there's a form of collaboration, but it's at the minimum. There's no information that is being shared with the regulator to know what's ongoing and all that. So that's why I am advocating for memorandum of understanding to ensure the effective management of the exchange.
Okay, thank you so much, Ivy. Any other questions? Or you can cue the mic.
Thank you very much. My name's Paul Kaunda. I'm a tech lawyer practicing all the way in Tanzania. I'm pretty really thrilled by both presentations from both speakers regarding the proper regulatory framework in respect to the IXP. If I got you correctly, and I as understand from my own perspective, there is no strictly regulatory framework which addresses issues of IXP. Majority of the regulations, or we tend to hide under the umbrella of the data protection laws, but it's different. Internet traffic is different. I think it's high time now we as AfPIF to engage with the governments at continental level, particularly to AU, to come up with a continental strategy to address these issues. Because what I see now is we're trying to mirror, the Brussels effect, the GDPR, and we incorporate it religiously into our own systems. I don't think that's it works. Even the Beijing effect likewise. So I think it's high time we come up with a draft proposal or to recommend properly what should the regulatory framework in respect to IXP look like. Thank you very much.
So we'll let Ivy have a go at that question. But Ben, we are in our panel is something that we think you're going to be talking about as well. Okay, Ivy, please, if you could answer the question.
Yes, I don't see his submission as a question. I think it's a contribution. But I think it also fits into what I'm advocating for, that this draft proposal engaging the African Union, the various regional groups like ECOWAS, and even in jurisdiction, our national in our national countries, our peculiar countries in our jurisdiction, coming up with something, not the regulator drafting something, but an effective collaboration with the stakeholders, because the stakeholders have been able to manage it themselves, especially for the guests. It is well managed and all that. The only thing that I see is lacking is that the regulator is not involved, not in strict regulations. Involvement, I mean, what goes on there, their challenges, and the other issues that come up. So if the regulator or government is aware of what's going on, what the activities are, They are aware of the challenges, they understand the challenges, and the policies that are being developed are developed to support it and not to restrict its operations or to make it backward, and for something that will make it sustainable. So I am for your recommendation and suggestion that coming up with a draft proposal or continental strategy to address IXP issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. One comment from Fiona, then one last question so that we can start our panel in time. I'll hand you over my mic.
Just a quick clarification, there are two issues here. There is the issue of data protection, which already the African Union has got a framework that was launched on the 22nd of July, 2022, that is being used by all the countries to guide on that data protection. So that's a whole separate issue. Then there is the whole issue Ivy has raised of the framework for exchange points and how they should be handled, which is a whole different issue. And I think the general practice over the last 2 decades or so has been to let the communities run the exchange points. However, there are countries where the communities have not been able to come together, but the governments have seen the relevance of having an exchange point. And so the regulator is tasked to set up that exchange point and to try and get the service providers to come together around the exchange point and to run it. Because we have exchange points that were started by governments, and I've seen the governments have pulled out and left it to the communities, which has also worked well.
Thank you so much. You know, I was going to ask you, well, this is getting quite warm and we are liking it. So what I'll do now, we'll save your question. Ben is going to come back, and when he addresses everyone, then we can all contribute. Ben, please start. You can use that mic. Thank you so much, guys, for listening to.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. And thank you, Ivy. I hope you're hanging on to listen as well, because we're going to be talking about regulations from a perspective of industry. And I just want to ask, have a show of hands, how many regulators are here in the room listening today? Anyone who's working for a regulator, put your hand up. Okay, not so many. But hopefully our interventions will be recorded. But in Kenya, I come from Kenya, and there we have quite a consultative process of generation of regulations, where the industry will actually sit at the same table, often with the regulators in drafting. But today's panel is the policy, regulation and taxation for growth of the digital economy. And we have some great guests here, but I'll give you a bit of a background. So there was a digital economy blueprint, which was put together and launched by His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, President of Kenya, here in Kigali in 2019 at Transform Africa. And this blueprint, though it was done by Kenya, but it was a contribution to Transform Africa Alliance, which is working to digitize the economies of 24 countries across the continent. The Smart Africa Alliance, it aims to leverage on technology to provide a single digital market in a region that enjoys a population of about 600 million people. And the 24 member states are expected to adopt the digital economy blueprint and use that to develop their relative digital strategies for the country. I'm from Fiona as well. We've been on a task force in Kenya to develop the digital strategy for Kenya, and I think this is going on in other countries. But the blueprint defined 5 pillars of the digital economy, being digital government, digital infrastructure, digital business and innovation-driven entrepreneurship, and which is startups and tech startups, and digital skills and values. So in this panel, we really want to explore the regulation issues emerging and future and threatening for each of the pillars and what's cross-cutting as well. Anybody can contribute to other pillars. You know, there have also been some changes with the pandemic, which has accelerated the digital economy. So we want to sort of touch onto these things, what is going and any changes that have emerged as we look towards the future of regulation and policy. So the panelists here, they're representing the different pillars, and I'll introduce their names, but I'll come to them one by one. But you have Fiona, you've met, she's CEO of TESPOK. She's representing digital infrastructure as running exchange points. There's Gina Haspiler, she's the VP Partner Engagement for Netflix. So Netflix are a digital business, a digital service, become very popular in Africa, especially in the last few years. We have Natalie Munyampenda. We met her earlier as well. She's the CEO of Kepler and very much entrenched in contributing towards digital skills and values. And Ibrahima Saidou, he's the CEO of ANSI from Niger, which is looking after the digitization of government of Niger. Now, I'm actually going to come to Ibrahima first. The first question really is just to ask about, you know, what are you doing in Niger to bring in digital government? It's a very important piece of getting people to go online. You know, we've been very successful in Kenya with iTax, has been around for a long time, and we have a digital citizen site. And this gets people to go online and it helps people build the skills. So everything is interlinked. But I really want to know, what are you in Niger? How are you seeing things? What are you doing? And what policies or regulations so far have been successful in helping you doing what you're doing, and what else is needed? What do you see as regulation policy needed in Niger?
Can you hear me? Oh, okay. It worked this time. So thank you very much. It's really a pleasure for me being here. For Niger, it's our first time. And there is a reason for that. I was listening to the previous comment. I mean, one reason really for Niger being here and having a delegation, because with me also we have the Ministry of ICT that is here, national operators and some ISPs, is because we come to a point where we want to set up our own exchange point in Niger. And being a late player or coming late in the game, I mean, has some advantages. So we want to take advantage of really the experience across the continent and even abroad to have the proper setup. So coming back to the question, in Niger, I mean, it's really along the same lines. We are a latecomer to the digital world, so to speak. What we decided to do is not only you have to focus on digitalization, but we wanted to focus on digitalization for a reason, so to speak. We tie in really the digitization with development. We are a country with little resources, let's say quote unquote poor country on one side, but I think extremely rich on any other, because we have the youngest population on earth and the fastest growing population as well. So what we have decided to do is to come up with a strategy similar to the one of Kenya, because we're also part of Smart Africa, by the way. And alongside the Kenya blueprint, we also launch ours, which is the Smart Village Blueprint, also within the Smart Africa communities. And that's also why my organization was set up. Initially, it was a technical ministry, which we transformed into an agency that actually really played the role of bringing the whole ecosystem together. We wanted to have a sort of neutral entity. Yes, I report to the president, I sit at the office of the president, but I play a role that actually bring together both the public sector and the private sector. And we're trying to enable them. As to pure digital government and digital, let's say e-government or digital government, on one hand, we are enabling that full digitization, both in terms of infrastructure within the government, whether it's fiber, whether it's a data center, whether it's services, whether it's different platforms, but we want those to be run by the private sector, of course, with some control. But that alone at least in Niger, our thought is that it's not enough. Really, we need to have a whole story. So we're digitizing the government because in Niger, it is, let's say, the main stakeholder really within the economy. So we want, in order for the economy to be digitized, you need to have that main player to be fully digitized. But we know that within the government, we don't have the skills that are needed to not only probably build the networks and the service and the system, but also the mindset. I think that's maybe what is important. So that's why we're bringing in other components, especially the youth. As I say, we are the youngest population on the planet. So that's why we tied entrepreneurship with what we're doing, because entrepreneurship has to be linked to also access to opportunities. It's not only funding, but the young entrepreneurs have to have access to contracts, so to speak. And then we have that going on in Niger. There are many projects that actually we're issuing tenders among just those small businesses, and that we fund either through the Universal Access Fund, which actually we manage, or through other public fund that we're able to have access to. We also set up an innovation city because we need to build content. So the digitization has to make sense. So there is one that we set up at about 35 kilometers from the city center. We have clusters there. And again, in Niger, it's ICT really for development. So we have clusters around healthcare. We have clusters around fintech, clusters around AI, really those key elements or pillars for development. We have clusters around them. We have a digital academy that we set up. We are going to inaugurate before the end of the year, Drone and Data Academy, because again, it makes sense for what we're doing. For those who know Niger, it's a very large country, huge landmass, but low density of population. So you need to leverage really technology to get there. Government is helping by making resources available and also creating really the environment for that, but not being involved itself in doing that. We have just awarded a few weeks ago a large contract to operators actually to connect the unconnected. Niger is probably the most rural country on the continent. Most of the population is in a rural area. Only 7% of population lives in the capital city. So what we have done, there is $100 million fund that we're allocating to that. So we just awarded about 50 million or so of that, as I said, a few weeks ago to 2 operators. They have a maximum of 3 years to connect close to 3,000 communities and bring services to them. It's not just the connectivity by itself, but it's really the bundle of services, healthcare services, fintech, I mean, the basic services that citizens have to have access to. We are also deploying digital community centers because we want the communities or the citizens really to be empowered and to be skilled and to develop local content. So there is 150 of those that we're deploying. And all this, by the way, that I'm saying, we have that up and running already. We have some up and running. And of course, we want to scale up now because we have piloted them for over 2 years or so. So this is ongoing. And then there is another $50 million that we want to allocate actually to accelerate that. That's why also we're part of the GIGA community so that we can connect on the schools. Last thing that we're doing, and of course, all this is new. That's why in terms of regulation also, you'll be surprised, although I work with the government, I'm more in favor of very light regulation, because this is new for all of us. And we don't want to make the same mistake that was done before with the national gateways, for telcos. I think it just slowed things down. So what we're planning to do, and by the way, the exchange point in Niger, we're driving it in coordination with the ministry and with the regulator and the local ecosystem. So we want it to be collaborative. We just want to create the environment that is going to enable the players to bring the maximum they could, without, of course, overpassing certain just basic rules. So because of that, we're setting up also activities around awareness. So we run a monthly awareness boot camp across the country. We bring also the president, we just completed one training really in the country. So that's not only the regulators, but government agent or agencies are up to date in terms of what is happening elsewhere, but also that we scale really the whole ecosystem. So in a nutshell, what we're trying to do is really enable that following, let's say, the Kenya blueprint, but with an emphasis on the rural community, because in Niger, that's where most of the population is. And I guess for us, it's tech for dev. How can we leapfrog, being a latecomer, leapfrog technology so that we can really address our key challenges? Because otherwise, we believe it doesn't make sense. When we talk about even break even or making, I don't know, contributing to some sort of bottom line, we have to define and agree what the bottom line is. It's not only dollar value, but it's the quality of living of our citizens across the country. And so that's basically what we're trying to do. And Niger would like to be one of the center of excellence for that, if you will. Thank you very much.
It's quite, it's very refreshing. And I would say as well, like, you know, the evolution of internet exchanges has come about from a need. Now, in the case of Kenya, it was a long time ago, but ISPs saw a need to reduce their international bandwidth by, you know, and ISPs connected to each other rather than paying Intelsat for their bandwidth. If that hasn't yet happened in Niger, if the operators have not felt that need, you're coming up with a new application. You're doing digital government, e-government services, but you need your citizens to be able to connect to your services without the data going to Intelsat. Hence you are pushing the needle, and that makes perfect sense. So I'm glad to hear, you know, it's the right reason to take the right initiative, I would say. I want to come to Gina now. I think, you know, quite a lot of issues, and even, you know, Fiona talked about copyright and emerging issues around copyright regulation. But in Nairobi, let's say 5 years ago, if I wanted to watch, if most people who wanted to watch a movie, they would buy a DVD on the street corner. What Netflix has done, we saw earlier, there's a very high penetration of fixed broadband in Kenya. But what Netflix has done is made it convenient. So if people want to watch a movie, it's very accessible. So without even intervening in copyright, you're actually, by providing a service that's easy and quick, like it was buying a DVD on the street, you're actually getting people to consume and pay for copyright services. So I think transforming, you know, where the infrastructure is there, we're seeing there's a transformation in the way people are viewing. And certainly I know that Netflix, you're the second, well, you're the biggest paid entertainment supplier in Africa. That I think you're probably the second biggest video entertainment supplier. One of them is free, and the focus is on cat videos, but you know, you're having a different thing. So where do you see Netflix going, and what regulations have been good for you, and what might be a barrier in Africa?
So, hi, I'm Gina Haspili. I'm really happy to be here. So thank you so much for having me. You know, we used to mail those DVDs in the US. That's how the business started. So we used to have these little red envelopes, and the little red envelopes, you'd go to a machine, you'd get it, and we'd mail it to you. You'd go online and order it. And then we basically transitioned that business online. And so for us, the internet is critical, and it's how we deliver all the investment that we make in content. So we are an entertainment company. We believe if we continue to invest in content, good content, we will be able to drive demand levels for internet access providers. And so from our perspective, the relationship between us, ISPs, and regulators are key. it's three legs on a stool. We have been all over the world working in a very collaborative manner with the two of them. And so what's refreshing sitting here is, and listening to the conversation, is the fact that I think that our interests very much align. I was expecting like a little bit more of what I'm seeing in Europe, a more developed market, or in Korea. And to my satisfaction, I'm happy, because my advice was going to be to preserve the global core principles of the internet. Because at the end of the day, we're moving into a space where digital infrastructure, digital businesses is the internet. It's the independent networks connected that becomes that network. And in absence of being able to preserve the governance around that, it just falls apart. And so for us, our commitment and what we have been doing for about 10 years now to make it easy for service providers, to make it easy for consumers to access Netflix, is we made about $1 billion investment. And this year we're starting to, basically this year we're starting to kind of like refresh certain infrastructure that we provided the ISPs for the delivery of Netflix. As Ivy mentioned, localization of content is key. And so 10 years ago, we realized that if we were gonna deliver Netflix over the internet, and the internet wasn't at the time ready to handle streaming of movies, I mean, quite frankly, the internet has come a long way in 10 years. We decided that we needed to invest in how we encode our content, how we basically distribute it by building a CDN that had an adaptive engine to it, so that it could determine how much bandwidth existed. Because at the end of the day, people are not going to watch movies on the internet if it doesn't feel like they're watching television. The quality of what television, the television experience are to consumers, is what is going to drive people to wanting to use the internet to watch content. And we recognize that. And through that investment, we have deployed a lot of infrastructure around the world. And it's 10 years old. And I know Africa may not have been ready 10 years ago, but there were people in Africa watching Netflix 10 years ago. Whether they VPN'd, or I'm not sure exactly how they did it from a technology standpoint, but that's how it became so popular. It became so popular not because we advertised, it became popular because of word of mouth. And the one thing that I will say is that most recently, April, we made a even more aggressive commitment, even though we delivered terabits of traffic today to all of Africa. And so while we have coverage and relationships with some of the larger providers in Africa, what we do recognize is the fact that there are a lot of smaller markets with smaller ISPs that just don't have the means or the resources to be able to kind of like take a cache and put it into their network. So in April, we came out right here, right down the road with the ITU, and we made a partner to connect pledge of basically putting our infrastructure in publicly accessible IXs so that we can localize the content even for the ISPs who cannot afford to basically have our equipment into their network for whatever reason. Now, we anticipate that that is going to localize about 80% of Netflix in all of Africa. And in addition to localizing the 80% of Netflix in Africa, we calculated that it's going to reach about 10 million subscribers. And that's, is it 10 million or 100 million? 10 million subscribers. I would kind of got the zeros, right? And so I don't know if that gets at what you were looking for, but I think from a regulatory standpoint, we would really encourage for the internet to remain an open, accessible flow of information environment through the collaborative interconnection of networks. and that the larger ISPs who can be perceived as monopolies participate in that process, because in my experience, that's where we find that there's perhaps a little bit more difficulty in interconnecting.
And I like that. I think probably many of us in this room, we all believe in adhering to the principles of the open internet, but I think sometimes we forget to say it, or we don't want to say it, Fiona. Maybe we go quiet and we don't want to stick our neck up and say that, but it's a good message in terms of the regulation. So I'm going to come now to.
But you know, I think COVID has caused a lot of places to want to basically put up the barriers, and that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of the fact that as the demand for the internet continues to explode, fragmentation, people, governments or regulators are going to feel as though they need to protect their geographies. And as a result, and protect it for good reasons, right? Because they're gonna, we can't handle the traffic, we got to control it. In that process, they lose sight of the fundamental principles of the internet. And not intentionally, what will happen is that you'll begin to see a lot of fragmentation. I think we're seeing it in Korea, right? The sender pay policy that's in place has proven that, transit prices are going to be higher, people are not going to invest, and the performance is not going to be the greatest. And so I think that's why I wanted to make that point, is that since COVID, we're seeing that countries are wanting to be a little bit more protective.
And you're going to be on the radar, because since COVID having accelerated the change in way people do entertainment, suddenly the traditional broadcasters are going to notice there's this. And maybe they should have been investing in African content like you are, rather than streaming Mexican soap operas. But so it's I'm going to come to Natalie, and obviously we had a great panel just now, and you were talking about women in ICT. But I think in this, we're talking about, when we talk of digital skills for the digital economy, we're talking 3 levels of skills. We're talking general consensus digital literacy, able to use an app and pay for things online. We're talking about a mid-level digital literacy where knowledge workers can use a computer and a spreadsheet and that kind of thing. And then we're talking about the high-level tech skills, and that many of the people in the room have lots of here. And of course, we widen the conversation to everybody here. It's not just we're bringing in the boy child too. So there was one point you picked on. You sort of said around issue around having time to develop policy advocacy, if I picked it right. And also you mentioned about doing away with the requirement for a degree. So in Kenya, we had an attempted legislation that said to be a licensed ICT practitioner, which meant you would have to have a degree to practice ICT. Anyway, so maybe you can tell us about what you're doing to develop digital skills in what you've been doing, in your roles as up to now and what you're doing now, and then how you see regulation and policy interventions are going to become necessary. What has been good? What is lacking when it comes to how we actually grow the skill?
Okay. First, I'm going to ask if they can give me a serviette. I'm having an allergic reaction, so I would like to, at some point, need to blow my nose. If someone can, thank you so much. So I think on the skill side, I was looking at the blueprint, and actually we supported the writing of it. So I'm glad to see a lot of the elements that we worked on there in my previous role at the Next Einstein Forum. And it's interesting because the basic, intermediate, expert, as they've broken it down, it's interesting because currently at Kepler, we work, all of our students come in from mostly public, thank you so much. They're coming from rural public schools, right? So these are not public, these are not Moringa students, as we would say in Kenya. These are not people who are exposed to digital tech very early. These are students who are either have seen technology but not used it themselves, laptop or smart classroom, etc. So when they come into our doors, they're coming for a university degree, but they've never used a laptop. Our degree is self-paced, it's online, it's competency-based. So that means we're looking for mastery of competencies, which is what Kenya is attempting to do, as opposed to you're going to get at the end of the year some percentage in A and B and C. So it's a completely different way of looking at mastery. And then it's fully online, it's self-paced, so you have to keep up. We have, normally it is self-paced, but we have requirements, monthly requirements. So you're asking a student who's never been exposed to any technology to do a fully online degree. So we quickly realized that it was never going to happen. And so we set up a foundation program. So before they even enter the degree, it used to be 12 months, now it's about 7 to 8 months, where we focus on first exposure to typing 50 minutes per 50 words per minute. And things like, turn on your computer, what are the basics parts of the computer, etc. And then we do, Excel and some advanced internet, Google Suite, etc., because that's what they're going to be using. And then we go to our student information system our learning management system that they're going to use. So then by the time they're very comfortable, it isn't enough just to do the digital side of skills. There's a lot that we do around literally rewiring how they think of learning. So learning to learn yourself, as well as soft skills. So how do I work in teams, etc. So we do that whole packaging. This is for me what I call basic. So that is something I think broadening the scope of what we call basic skills. It should not just be opening your computer and being able to use it. All right. And then after that, when they start their degree, then they're using obviously different, the case studies that they're using is already, using technology at an intermediate and then at some point an advanced level. And so our reflection on this has made us realize that a lot of students who are graduating from a university degree, and I can come back a little bit before the university, but we work mostly with students at the university level. We realized that when our students were graduating, we would survey employers, and they really did not care what people finished their degree in. Like they would say, I have a degree in project management, and or I have a degree in engineering, and they would be working, for example, for an ISP or for an MTN or, whatever their competitor are. And we would ask them, what skills do you, like? And the top of the list would be digital skills. Second would be communication skills. And repetitively, they would tell us, these are the two things we're looking for. Ability to kind of innovate using digital technology, and then communication skills. So it quickly dawned on us that what we really need to make sure that they were doing, besides the technical skills we were giving them, to make sure that we were aligning these two, I would say, pockets of skills to what the market today was paying for. And now we also support other, particularly TVETs, technical and vocational schools, as well as other universities on that. So we took our foundation program, we restructured it into 6 weeks, and we offer that in Ethiopia and in Rwanda to our partner here, which is the TVET umbrella, and in Ethiopia as well to 2 of the largest public TVETs. And we take their students and then we reskill them or upskill them with those 2 pockets of skills, so digital and soft skills and communications. So for me, if you look at the digital economy, if that is really the question, I think that these 2 pockets of digital, basic digital, plus what can you do with these skills, and soft skills and communication is what we need to really focus on. Because as you said, the second part of my point is, we're getting to a point where, I have to be very careful because I'm also regulated. As a university, we have been reflecting on, what happens to us when, as I said, I'm already not hiring for degrees outside of the academic positions that require a PhD. Every other position, we've kind of said, we'll look at people's CVs. We put out and say, hey, we're looking for this. But when we look at CVs, we don't really look at degrees. We look at what projects have you done technically, right? What have you led that is interesting to us? What have you built? And then we say, okay, this is really interesting to us, then we'll take it. When that requirement then comes into the whole market, because I think in Rwanda, definitely we are not going to get to a point like Kenya where we think of you must have a degree. Like I think we're much more flexible to different models. Once that is removed and the requirement for a technical degree doesn't exist, and you're looking at absorbing people who've taken boot camp plus other certifications, etc., then what is the role of a university? And so that's why now we're really looking at micro-credentials plus the work on the soft skills, because I think that the MOOCs themselves, in my opinion, failed because the incentive to finish the MOOC is not there. So finishing, why am I finishing this? So the way that we frame it for students is, if you acquire these skills, they have a direct correlation to your employment. Employers are looking for these, and the incentive is there. I'm finishing this micro-credential, I'm finishing the certificate for this, right? And so the certificate isn't necessarily because they got something from a university. It's more, what are we offering in the certificate that makes a difference and makes them hireable? I think that is the reflection from the university side. From the regulator side, what we're having a challenge with is traditional regulators, particularly in the higher education space, do not, they want to maintain quality, which is important, but it's very hard for them to move away from traditional models. So even the competency-based degree, when we took it to the regulator, it took them 2 years to say, what is this degree? Like, what are these names? Like, change the name. What do you mean you have to create marks? What do you mean mastery? We need to know that they have some percentage. And we would say, actually, the mastery is getting this mastery through multiple case studies and projects that we've determined. Once they have mastery, they go to the next project. So already defining quality and competency within these new structures. And also, what do you do with micro-credentialing? What do you do with certification? There's still like a gray space there. And the regulators in the education space tend to be much more narrow as opposed to other regulators. So I think there is an opportunity there for those in the tech space to also support the regulators that affect them, like the digital business, like the education regulators.
Yeah, definitely very traditional regulation in higher education. And I was told by a vice chancellor of a leading private university, he told me a story about, to get a license for a university in this particular country, to become a university, the first requirement is you need to have a library. So if you've got 10,000 students, you need to have a library of this many square meters. It doesn't say how many books have to be in there, but you have to have a library, and it defines the size. This is put in law. And so some of these things.
Actually, every country on the continent has that.
I say, okay.
Yeah. So it's, you don't have to skip the countries. All of us do. In fact, my university, when we were being accredited, we have an online degree. So all our library is online. Everybody has a laptop. It's when we give everyone a laptop. So why would we have a lot of physical spaces where students can study, but we don't have a library or a computer lab. And we were literally told, if you do not create this, we will not accredit you, right? Yeah. And so we have now infrastructure that we could have used for, we could have used for something else that we had to make into a library/computer lab. We've made it both. And students use the space. You have to find creative ways for that space to be used, but there's a lot of very old thinking around managing higher education and skilling, because I think there is a confusion that if you have a number of universities, then you have the skills that are required for the digital economy. And that's not true. You really have to think in terms of, and I used to use that example when I was in government, you have to plan to say, if we are going to go into the type of industries like Netflix and others and attract these type of players, do we have the people? Are we training people for these new businesses or industries that we're attracting? Like, if you are not planning to the skilling for that is not necessarily just degrees. So if you're going to do an IoT based agriculture business and you really want to push there, who has those skills? And at what point do you divert? I used to always say, why aren't you diverting other engineers? If you have a bulk of civil engineers and you need IoT engineers, can we divert people into those fields? And there's a lot of planning. That's why it's really an ecosystem, digital business, digital government skills. Somebody has to be thinking, hey, we have so many of these types of engineers, or, I always use the example of taking anthropologists and saying, how can we make them agricultural, digital savvy people? Because we need this, right? So we have to be creative, and regulators the burden should not be on regulators to think creatively, but they should help us once we've come up with a very creative plan to facilitate us.
Thanks. And Fiona, I'll come to you next. You obviously you've told us a lot about your I guess work in progress in terms of regulatory policy advocacy. And TESPOK, very much born out of it's a community-based organization born out of effectively what was an ISP association, which then went into running exchanges for the community. And I know in South Africa, there's been IXPs. I'm on their board, so they've been doing the same sort of thing, where the ISP association spawned that ISP association doing a lot of activity, policy advocacy, and the stuff that you were talking about, your work in progress. Of course, privately run internet exchanges are not going to fulfill that role, right? Those community ones, you're filling a dual role. But maybe you can tell us about your successes, right? We have some things to fight, but over the years, I know that TESPOK has won some significant battles for the ISP community. So maybe you can tell us about some wins, yeah, some happy stories from what we've achieved.
Thank you so much, Ben, for asking about the happy stories. Actually, I didn't thought through them, but there's been several. And I think our biggest wins have been the times we have participated in policy advocacy that has resulted in amendments within the law that worked for the industry and for the community. Case in point, we go back to 2015 Communication Information Act amendments. We were part of the drafting team, were involved in that process, and they did come out as we expected. We've been involved in developing 3 different ICT master plans for the country, and these have been very strategic policy documents that created opportunities for business across the board within the ICT space. So we looked at it from education, from digital business, from digital governments. And it is out of that when we began to draft the digital economy blueprint, it was much easier because we had a series of documents that we had developed with government and we could pick and now put into the Smart Africa digital economy blueprint. When we went back to draft the Kenyan blueprint, we were able to go back into our database, look at the data we had collected over the years in terms of areas that needed to be addressed. So agreeing on the pillars that we agreed on wasn't a big challenge for us. It was easy to agree with government on what the pillars should be. And then there is the whole activities that we've done around the internet exchange points today. When we look at the ASNs, African ASNs that are at KXP, we've got all the networks. And we are now even involved in an exercise where we are reaching out to community networks that have not been well structured and well formed, and working with the carriers, working with the data center providers, working with the entire ecosystem to just help them come on board. We've been working with digital broadcasters to bring them into the exchange, but again, helping them put their structures in place and put their systems in place. And at some point also getting them involved in the policy discussions, because both broadcasting and ICT is regulated by the same regulator in Kenya. And sometimes they think of digital broadcasting as being very different from the ISP, yet all of them are going to use the same infrastructure. So being able to just have those conversations so that we are able to address both the broadcasting issues and the other telco issues together has been one of the wins we have. And we've been able to come to a place where we are having every month government engagements with different government offices and bringing in the CEOs. Then we have sessions where we bring in the technical teams. We are having engagements with other infrastructure owners, the roads, Kenha, Kura, Rura, and Kenya Pipeline, having engagements with some of the water companies, Nairobi Water, Athi River Water, and bring these in for meetings with technical teams so that as they design, we are able to be involved with them in the process. And one of our quickest wins, though it's still a work in progress because there's some adjustments to be done on the ICT side, is the Nairobi Expressway. We began conversations in 2017 through 2018 in the planning, the designing of the road, and giving them specifications of our ICT requirements, for which Kenha was able to reimburse to the ICT ministry the cost of deploying ICT infrastructure. And so We've gone through a process where the road is complete. Our only challenge on that road is that the contractor who was engaged was given the wrong instructions, but they've agreed, ministry has agreed to do repair. So we are going to be able to start repair work on the ducts so that they're the size that is suitable for service providers. So we've had wins that have helped us, but it's not been easy because we've had to have, for the expressway, we had weekly meetings. Once the work began, once the digging began, we had to have weekly meetings, and sometimes we meet on site so that we are with the road contractor, we are the power contractor, the water contractor, and ourselves, because the different service providers have different teams. So I need to take in all the teams of the service providers so that we can have this conversation and agree on where our fiber passes, where the water passes, where the power, the sewer, and the road shall be. And we are, and as a result of that, we have been able to use that as a template for which the European Union is coming into Nairobi to now fund for us ducts for all the Nairobi infrastructure. So all the roads, all into houses, looking at where we have the infrastructure. And there's a consultant working with TESPOK to help us document every area that needs to be covered so that the EU will know how much they need to spend on the project. We have no say on how much they say, but we now have a say on what design should be, what the standard of that design should be, and where we can have the infrastructure done. And we're taking advantage to make sure that it can get into the residential areas, the last mile, as much as possible to ease the costs for the service providers. That, for me, I think is going to be the biggest success story we're going to have in the next few months.
And thanks. And I think it's actually important for everybody here to hear the hard work that goes on. I mean, ISP associations like TESPOK or ISPO in South Africa are largely have been funded by the operations of running the IXPs. So that has been their main revenue generating service, but that money is used to grow the industry and the infrastructure and protect the infrastructure. So just remember that when you're negotiating port fees, everybody, that the money is going to something useful to allow us to have digital infrastructure. I'm getting a 5-minute warning. Maybe it's over. Are we going to have some questions from the audience? I think. Okay, so questions, no questions, or? Okay, we're having questions, no questions, that's it. Okay, no worries. Then I'm just gonna thank the panel. Maybe I'm just gonna give everybody one parting word of, if you have a thought on, you know, what regulations don't you want to see? What regulations are going to impair you? I mean, I have a, you know, if you're seeing anything that's emerging, discussion of a regulation or policy that is going to set you back, just blurt it out as we close. So I'm going first to Ibrahima. Anything you see threatening what you seem to achieve?
I'll say not really, because now, I mean, there are so many things going on. My most fear is for us just to try to mimic what is happening elsewhere. Again, as I said earlier, what is happening is new for all of us, even for the developed world. So we just need to kind of be able to explore. And for me, as long as we're not really hurting the users, when the data protections are there, when the investments are protected, I think we need to give as much flexibility and freedom as possible, and let's really be.
I think the Americans say, if it isn't broke, don't fix it.
Absolutely,
yeah.
To some extent, yes.
Fiona, what do you see as the biggest threat?
Just speaking from your last statement, I think our biggest threat is the idea of governments feeling that they should be able to license ICT practitioners or to control ICT practitioners, because ICT is just a tool within different economic sectors and should be allowed to thrive, and for governments to allow for innovation to happen, because if you try to stifle that by licensing a practitioner and saying you can only do ICT within this space, it means the day I have an idea that can be useful for ICT on health and I try to go and get a license, I'll not qualify because I never studied medicine, and therefore the idea is shelved and we lose opportunities. So ICT is still very young. Let's leave it open.
Natalie.
Honestly, that was very well said. I would say that it's not for the Kenyas and not for the Rwandas, because in Rwanda and Kenya, to some extent, there is a sense that we understand that we have to build the entire ecosystem. So ISPs or even education, higher education institutions, you understand that you have to really talk to employers, you have to talk to, there's a sense that we understand that on the continent it's so fresh that you have to build the entire ecosystem, which is what Netflix and others have figured out. You have to do everything before you can start making money from your own business. I would say for the Nigers and the Malis and other countries where this siloed approach has led to development in some sectors, but then once you get to a point where you are trying to think of digital business, things fall apart because no one's talking to each other. I think in other countries, or there should be a better reflection on who needs to be at this table so that we can, using the blueprint, we can build each part of the blueprint, or else you're going to continue to take our platforms, and we're happy to sell them to you, right? Like the e-government services in Kenya's, we're happy to do that. But I think for countries to compete, you really have to think of how can we build an ecosystem, the ecosystems for each part of the pillars, and who needs to be at that table. I think that I used to work a lot on that, and they would say, oh, we're going to talk to the higher ed people or the skills people later. And you'd say, but then how would we know what we're training people into? Because we don't have that. So we have to have a reflection more on who needs to be at that table from the first discussion. And I think Kenya and Rwanda have been quite successful at it. And maybe others don't. Those are the two that I know.
Thanks. And Gina, anything you see threatening Netflix's expansion?
I mean, I think the only thing that I would say to sum up what everyone else has said is that the driver for innovation is competition. Innovation and investment requires a competitive environment, and we need to play nice together. And we need to realize that there's room for all of us. And if we collaborate and maintain that ecosystem, we all will be very, very happy in 10 years. So that's what I would say.
Wonderful. So thank you to the panelists. It's been a very exciting discussion. And I'll hand back to the MC. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben, and our panelists. A round of applause as they leave the stage. Are we going to give them gifts now? Or maybe we can do a session of photos before they leave, because it would be difficult to get you back. Yeah, please come back for your nice round of pictures. And meanwhile, we are getting Frank and his team ready. There won't be any interference from the pictures. We can have pictures while we are talking as well. So Frank, if you have a mic close to you, you can start telling us who is on the queue for the peering personals, please. Thank you so much, Ben. This one works.
Thanks, Matthew. So we have Enoch on the queue to put the slides up, please. And I'm requesting everybody who has sent in their slides for the introductions to come in front so that they come into stage, starting with Kenneth, and then Afrinix, Cedric, and Web for Africa, Development Bank of Rwanda, ISPA DRC, and Meta, and Renu. Yeah, Renu. There were two people. Is somebody from Kenneth already here in the room? Yes, please come. And next slide.
Good evening. My name is Judah Opuk. I serve as the lead network development engineer at Kenneth. Kenneth is the National Research and Education Network of Kenya. So we distribute and aggregate traffic upwards of 50 gigs to about 430 educational institutions and also research institutions. We built a nationwide network. We've activated close to 3,000 kilometers of fiber. So aside from peering, we can also engage on infrastructure sharing. So for peering, our ASN is 36914. We are present at the KXP, ICOLO in Nairobi, and also SICOM CLS in Mombasa. Our peering policy is open. For other details, you can search for us at the peering DB. Contact details, support@kenet.or.ke. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Somebody from Web for Africa, if you're in the room, please come in front. Thanks, Cedric, continue.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cedric. I'm a middleman at Afrinic. So Afrinic is currently peering at different locations. We are present at Jinx with the AS33764, and also present with in other locations with 2 ASN, so 37177 and 37181. For those who don't know, Afrinic is the regional internet registry, but on top of the services that we offer like WUIs, IRR, ADAP, and everything, we also have our Anycast program where we make available the reverse DNS zone. So we are currently present at Sinks, Dinks, so Cape Town, Durban, Jinx, Rinex, Madagascar, Tanzania, but also we are actually planning expansion in Mauritius IXP and also in Mombasa. We have open peering policy, and if any of you is interested also to help us to host our Anycast program, we are really happy. So you can actually reach us to peering@afrinic.net, or you will find us on PeeringDB. Thank you.
Thank you, Cedric. And next slide, please. This is Web for Africa. It was submitted, but nobody is in front for it. So take notes, take pictures if you like. But I believe the slides will also be made available online as soon as possible. Thank you. They are already being made online, I believe now, by sign of hands. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, that person is also not here, it seems. So please continue and look to the next one. Yes.
Hello, Daniel from ISPA DRC, who own 3 IXP in the main CD in DRC. And we want to work together with all the ISP or IXP who want to connect with us. Our policy is open. And feel free to contact us in this email. We are available here, or you can also have all information in PRDB. Thank you.
Yeah, please.
Hello, everyone. Michelle from Meta on the Edge team. Meta is, we have 2 ASNs. We have AS32934. And in Africa, we are pairing, private pairing and public pairing. We have private pairing available at Cape Town in Terraco, Alexandria at Hoetu Data Center, Lagos Medallion Center, and we have Rack Center coming up soon for private pairing, and ICOLO, Mombasa, MBA1, and Johannesburg as well. We are at Terraco, and we're happy to pair with you there if you're present. If you're not and you'd like to do public peering, we have Cape Town, Sinks and NAP, Lagos, IXPN and WAF-IX, as well as Mombasa, Asteroid and KXP, Johannesburg, Jinx, and NAP Africa. Next slide. All right, and we have ASN 63293, which is our multi-shared FNA, and we have it available at several public peering areas. We have Angola XP, Ango Nix, and all the rest that you can see here. too many to mention, but we're happy to pair with you, either with our FNA or directly to our POPs in the public peering. Public peering, I've had a long day. I'm done talking, but yeah, thank you. We're happy to pair with you. Ben and I are available if you want to chat.
Thank you, Michelle. Ronald, please come for Reno.
Hello, everyone. I am Ronald Matovu. I'm from the Research and Education Network for Uganda. It is an NREN. I've seen Kenneth. I was worried we were alone in this space. We have presence at the Uganda Internet Exchange Point. And our ASN is 327687. Policy is open, and you can get more details on our website and other. So the network serves research and education institutions. We have over 400 institutions that we connect, including universities, research institutions, schools, technical institutions, and others. Happy to be here and happy to be with you all. I came with a colleague, Daniel Kauma. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ronald. Okay, these are all the introductions for this session. There's another session tomorrow, and I hope some more people will submit if they want to be recognized in the hallways for discussions. Some of them are my friends. If they want to stay my friends, send us something. And with that, we are finished. And
thank you, Frank. Round of applause for Frank. Why not? It's good to embarrass him. Quick closing notes. If you're running an AP, your own access Wi-Fi point, please turn it off. It causes grief for everyone else, and we have enough problems with the Wi-Fi already. Tonight is the dinner between 6 and 9. Which is offered by Richter, who are obviously our local host. It's at the Serena Hotel, 5 minutes walk away. Go out of the Marriott, turn left, and walk straight ahead. There will be ushers to guide you, so you shouldn't get lost. Not having been there, I'm going to take the note's word. The time is 6 till 9, and the dress code is as comfortable as you would like. So it's not formal. You can dress up, but you don't have to. Okay. Tomorrow we start with peering with bilaterals at 9 till 10:30, and then the main session kicks off at 11, and we'll have Yolandi's talk that we had to drop earlier. As ever, thank you for our sponsors. Thank you for all the help organizing. Thank you to my fellow PC members, and most importantly, thank you for coming and staying. See you all tomorrow and have a fabulous dinner. Thanks. Oh, one thing. And you must bring your badge. No badge, no dinner. So please wear your badge, at least in the front door.